Hey everyone, I'm Allison.
I'm Bryce.
And we're Better Half Reviews. And today we're talking about Pendulum, a game by Travis Jones, and it's published by Stonemaier Games.
In Pendulum, you are using time to outwit your opponent. The person that uses time the best will usually win.
Usually.
So, let's jump into it.
Alright, so in this game, everybody has their own board, and they have asymmetric setups. Not necessarily powers or anything, but you have this yellow, red, and blue, and they start at the end, and you have to go past the line to try to score, be eligible to win. Oh, and there's gray. But everybody's player boards have different lengths for the different colors. And you're going to be using worker placement and, as Bryce said, time with these timers to move things around and try to gain resources and pay for abilities and cards and
victory points.
Victory points, yeah, the important thing. But yeah, this game is different than most games we've played before because it's not like people see timers and they're like, real-time game.
I mean, it does say Pendulum is a turnless real-time strategy game. So yes, it is a real-time game, but when I think real-time, I think you're trying to beat the timer to
do something within a certain amount of time.
Yeah, do something within a certain amount of time.
And the round's over.
If you don't do it, then you're going to be penalized, or you're not going to be able to score points or whatever. But here, the timer really restricts your movement, restricts like what you can do, and slows the game down, in my opinion.
It can. But the thing is, with the timers, it's not like, oh, the timer ends, okay, reset everything. It's the players who choose to flip it back over. It's up to the player's discretion. So that's what I think was interesting with this, where it's like, yes, it is timed, but we're kind of in charge of when we're going to be flipping it because you put workers out onto the board in different sections, but you can only place them there if a timer is not on that spot. And then say like I have mine like, I don't know, in the green area. I place it, and then as soon as the timer is flipped and put there, now my worker can actually do the action I want them to, but then they're stuck there until this timer has run out and has flipped over to the next spot in that section.
I think what you said is really important, though. Just because a timer runs out doesn't mean you have to flip it over.
Correct.
And the end of the round is triggered by the longest timer being flipped over 3 times.
3 times, yeah.
I believe. Or 4 times. Technically, you flip it.
Well, yeah, you
like
flip
right
it
when
to
you start is 1, and then you flip it 3 more times. So you can have a really long round if no one is flipping that timer, or you can, make the round as short as possible by like purposely flipping the timer, even though you're not using those sections that timer is controlling.
There's one time you did that to me, and I was like, oh shoot, he's pushing for it to go quick. I need more time. But anyway, so that's kind of a roundabout way where there's some things we didn't talk about where there's cards you can get at the end of the round, depending on how well you're doing. You can get some different bonuses, and we talked about worker placement, but also with some of these cards, it's kind of like a mini deck building game. Tiny.
Tiny. You only get, 3 cards? Or 4 cards?
4.
During
but then at the end of the round, you could get another card. So some of those cards can be used once, or some of them can be used once per... Well, you can reload it.
Well, yeah, some of the cards can only be used once. Some of the cards go into your hand.
Yes, thank you.
To be used over and over again. So what are some other things you like about this game?
Oh, wow. Okay. I'll start with the easy stuff.
Okay.
Components. Well, I guess that's... I like... okay. That's not the easy stuff, but with Stonemaier Games, they have some different components that I do like that they tend to put in them. Like, these boards, they're kind of like...
textured.
Scratchy. And so, even though they're not dual layered, like people like to have like souped up, and when you're playing with your pieces, since it has the texture, they don't like run away as quickly if you bump it or something. So I do like that they do that with some of their boards to kind of keep pieces in place. Something else that I liked, despite it seeming like a lot once you get started, it's not too bad. Like, you're like, oh, okay, I just need to move my workers. I mean, it is a lot to handle in your head because you're trying to keep track of timers and where your workers can and cannot go. But I kind of liked the flow of the game and that we controlled the time aspect. That was really intriguing to me, where it's real time in my opinion. But I don't know, it was just a really cool concept.
Yeah, I like the strategy to it because one timer only goes for like 30 seconds, the other timer goes for a minute, and the other timer goes for like 2 minutes. I could be totally wrong on those times, but you get the idea. One's really short, one's kind of in the middle, one's really long. So you're like, oh, well, I'm just going to load up all my people on the short timer so I can like do a ton of actions. But the short timer only gets you resources. You have to go to the other longer timers to do things that'll like get you points or move you up on these tracks. And so you're like, okay, so when do I sacrifice someone to be, on the middle length timer that's going to be, they're going to be trapped there for at least a minute, or on the longer timer where they're going to be trapped there for a really long time and kind of useless the whole game, almost useless the whole game. Or it's like, how many times can I push the lower timer and then be able to move my people to the long timer right before it flips for that one last time? I don't know. It's just really interesting choices in my opinion.
Yeah, it has like a really good puzzle to it. And then with that, like you have two different types of workers. You have like the small one and the grande or grand workers. If there's a grand worker somewhere on like the main two sections, you can't put the smaller worker there. You have to put another grand worker because it's like, oh, well, they're taking up the space or they're more important. Like you can't come in. So like there's that level of strategy, timing everything with the timers and then timing things with what people are doing. So there's times where like I'm playing the game and I'm like, okay, I need to flip that timer, and if I flip it quickly, he's gonna like miss out on an opportunity and I can like take this spot. So it's just crazy where there's a little bit of take that if you want, but most of the time I feel like you're so into like what you need to do and when you need to do it, and you're like, oh yeah, I get to block someone too. Okay, cool, that's fine. He's probably like, oh yeah, I'm gonna block her here. I'm gonna do this, and I have 5 steps ahead of her, and pretty much.
Speaking of 5 steps ahead of her,
oh no,
it's not really that. Okay. It's a negative for this game, in my opinion.
Okay.
The timers really do restrict like what you can do, and while it's nice, kind of from a strategy perspective, because you can't just go all around the board and just do whatever you want when you want to do it, I find that there's a lot of downtime. It's like, okay, flip, and you do your like 30-second timer move like really quick, and then you're just like, okay, now I gotta wait 30 seconds, and then it's gonna flip, and I can't put those workers on that 30 seconds that just flipped. I have to put them on the line that's not being activated right now, so I have 30 more seconds to wait before they can get activated again. And you're just like sitting there going, oh, I did all my moves, now I'm sitting here for a minute before I can do anything else.
I can see that. Like there were some times where I was like, okay, can we just flip the timers? But my caveat will be sometimes I appreciate the downtime, because when the timers are going, you're like, okay, I gotta do this action, oh, gotta do this now, gotta do this before the timer moves. The times where you're like, oh, nothing can happen, I can like sit back and be like, okay, what do I need to do now? So I appreciate that, because like my analysis paralysis or lack of forward thinking, I'm like, okay, now I have time to like think for a second. Okay, I can plan it out. So yes and no to it.
I sit there going, okay, I have a minute before I have to do anything. Let me like clean up the board, and because one thing is like when you buy something, you don't necessarily have to go and flip something out.
Yeah.
Flip it out and like replace it right away. So like people will buy things, and then there'll be like 2 or 3 open spaces, and I'm like, well, I have nothing else to do. Let me just refill the open spaces. I'm already planned out like 5 turns ahead, so.
Yeah. We didn't mention this before. We've only played it at 2-player. It's 1 to 5 players, I believe.
Yes.
I think this would be very crazy and very interesting to play at 3 and 4-player, or 5-player would be intense.
I think you're right, because you'll have more of the bigger workers in play that can block those spots more.
There'd be a lot more people everywhere, spaces where you're like, I can't go there now.
People like reaching across each other, and then I think it'll be a little more time sensitive where you're like, well, there's 3 cards flipped over. I really want to buy that one. So let me like reach it and grab it before someone else does. I agree.
On a 2-player, you can maybe like take your time a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I cut you off. What were you going to say?
I was going to say we had a hard time finding people who wanted to play because just of the negative connotation of real-time games.
One other thing I want to mention is, well, actually, no, I think I'll talk about it later. Let's go into the negatives officially. I'll say other things.
I've been negative for a while.
Okay, well, fine. I'm going to start my negatives. Components.
I thought this was a positive.
I like most of all the components except for the timers.
Horrible.
They look cool. They're nice. The bottoms for these are constantly falling over. Constantly. Because you're reaching around and if you like slightly bump anything, they just tip over. And I don't know if maybe it's just ours, but sometimes the sand gets stuck in the timer.
Not sometimes.
A lot.
It's like several times a game.
So we'll be playing and then it's like, wait a second, I should be able to flip my person. It's been way over time and we're like, oh.
Yeah,
it wasn't going.
It's like, wait a second, our middle timer should have ran out by now, and our long timer ran out, but our middle timer still has sand in it. Oh, it's not moving.
And in a game where you're trying to time things, like, that really can mess up your game. And I've had that where it's like, I should have had that worker available, and now that other timer's already been flipped, and I wasn't able to move my worker because of the stupid timer.
Yeah, the sand got stuck in the timer. And I'm like, how do you fix that? Do you, like, have phones?
I don't know.
And the problem with phones is there's going to be an alarm once the countdown's up.
And it doesn't have to necessarily, go.
Yeah, I was going to say, you don't necessarily have to, like, flip it and restart the alarm right when that goes off.
I don't know.
So it's like, that might ruin it in a way.
Yeah, so it's like, I don't know if it's just our game or, I mean, it's not that humid here. I don't feel like it should be getting, like, stuck like that. So if other people have been playing Pendulum and you've had that issue, let us know. I don't know if it's just ours or not. But yeah, that can really, really put a damper on the game and the strategy where you're like, well, crap. So that's one of the negatives that I had.
Other negatives that I have. I mean, this isn't a negative, but like, this is a chunky rulebook. And I don't think it needs to be this big. Granted, you have like full page diagrams of the board, but I don't know. This is just way too much of a rulebook in my opinion.
Well, from the Stonemaier games that we played before, the rulebooks have been like obscenely short, and you're like, wow, this had a lot more to it, different things going on, so it was intimidating to start reading the rulebook, but I think they have a lot of examples.
And then you have the automa, and then you have this reference sheet, and then
setup,
I don't know. It just it's like, this doesn't need to be this big.
I like playing some solo games, and I set up to play this game solo at least 3 times, and every time I was like, nope, not gonna do it, and I put it away. Because, can you hear me that? When you're playing solo, you have to set up 2 other automa players, and so they have different meeples on the board, and then things that you're gonna be moving up and flipping and doing their actions. It was just too much for me. It was too intimidating because in a game where you're like, I gotta think on the fly, do my stuff. But if I do this type of thing, it triggers this, so I have to remember to do that and flip over. It was, I don't know. If anybody plays Pendulum solo, please tell me how you do it and why you're a hero, because I can't. I can't do it unless I'm like a pro playing this. It was too much for me. I mean, I didn't even get to play it, so I can't judge the solo game, but I can't even get myself to play it. It's too much. Pendulum is a game that when it came out, anytime a Stonemaier game comes out, everybody's like, oh my goodness, it's a Stonemaier game. I'm so excited. People pre-order it. And this one, I heard so much negative stuff from it. I was like, okay, just won't even look into it. And then we did get a chance to get this copy for review. So we did get it from Stonemaier Games. But regardless, our opinions are our own. This game, I was like, I'm not expecting much. We'll just try it. We're getting it for free. If I don't like it, then whatever. I was very much pleasantly surprised. I really enjoyed it a lot. And with people saying it's a real-time game, like we've said, it doesn't feel like a normal real-time game. What it felt like was a Euro game where everybody's playing at once. Because you have like your workers and stuff you're trading in and resources and cards you're gaining. It felt like a Euro game with players kind of being in control of the time element.
Yeah, it's like everybody can take their turn at once. A Euro game with everybody taking their turn simultaneously. And you're just taking a turn whenever you could move a meeple.
A people.
A people.
But yeah, so I feel like people who don't like real-time games but really enjoy Euro games and like strategy of like timing of like, ooh, I need to go to this spot or I need to take this spot before other people do, I think you should give it a try.
I think calling this a real-time game kind of did it a disservice because, like we've already mentioned multiple times, that real-time games have this bad connotation. This is definitely, yes, it's real-time, quote unquote, but it has a completely different feel than any other real-time game I've played. So it's definitely worth a try. I'm personally excited to try it at 3, 4, maybe even 5 player, because I think that is going to kind of get rid of some of the downtime.
It's going to get rid of my comfort zone of strategizing. But yeah. So yeah, I think it's worth a try. Pendulum, try it out. If you live near us, try it with us, please. We want to play it more with more people. But yeah, it's a good one. It's worth it, and I'm glad that we got to try it. So, I'm Allison.
I'm Bryce, and we're Better Half Reviews.
Happy gaming!
Have fun!
Pendulum. I forgot who did it. And play Pendulum. But get better timers. Wow.